Hello everyone. In this video what you're going to learn is you're going to learn how to take a portrait out of a background and put it into a new background which is more appropriate for the portrait. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to load a raw file. If I go to my portrait files, and I'm going to pick up on the raw file. And the raw file is the .raw file, which is a Fuji raw file. Your extension may be different, but use a raw file for this process. So if you double click on it, it will load into the raw editor. The very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to check the file size. And if we go down to the bottom of the screen, you'll see a bit rate. And we're going to change this bit rate to be 16 bits. Okay, we've got a 24 meg file and we're working it at 16 bits. In other words, we're going to keep it at its maximum quality for edit. So you'll now see at the bottom of the screen that your image is 16-bit and it's 24 meg in size. The first thing we're going to do with this file is we're going to auto-correct it. We're going to allow the computer to suggest what changes need to be made. So if I open up the basic tab by clicking on it, you will see that all of these settings are currently at 0 with the exception of temperature and tint. So if I move up and select auto, then it will populate these areas. And a few seconds later, it's populated the areas as to what it believes are the best settings. Our next move is to correct the white balance. Just leave the white balance a tad of a correction. So if we pick up our eyedropper and we're moving over to find an area of grey that is very close to where our mid-tone exists. Remember, from previous videos, mid-tone is a value of 126, and if we fall within a 5% ratio, then that's fine. And as you can see from here, off the colour in the shadow of the white shirt, we find that we've got 129, 129, 131, which is perfect. So if I click that button, we're fine. One of the other things that I noticed about this image firsthand is the saturation. And at this particular stage, I want to move the saturation down a little. I think that the subject is just a little bit too high coloured. And I'm just going to bring the saturation down. And as you can see, as I bring the saturation down, that looks a lot more. I've just taken it down by minus, let's keep the numbers round. So if I take it down by minus 20, you'll just see that there's been a change in the saturation, which is much more acceptable. If we move along now, and again, these are all adjustments to suit your eye. If you like it to be high toned, then leave it the way it is. But if you want it to, if you want your audience, if your wider audience to appreciate the image, then make these subtle adjustments. If we move on now to fix up the lens, and as we know, lenses are all curved, and we need to effectively make that adjustment. So we move to optics and click on optics. We'll see that remove chromatic aberration is there as standard, just leave that ticked, and then we tick the user profile corrections. This allows us to see two other choices. In this case, we are going to leave the setup default, and we're going to pick the built-in, and we're going to pick in built-in as the Fujifilm lens. So if I click on that lens, and if you watch the image along the side, you'll see a slight kink getting ironed out. So the lens has now been corrected. And we now move along to our next option, and that is to look at the geometry. And what the geometry does, it allows you to straighten the image. This image was taken on a tripod that I know was level. So whenever I actually click on A to invoke a change, if it knows it's level, it will give me a beep in the background. and I've just received a beep telling me that that image is straightened or was straight in the first place. Our next stage is to move to Photoshop, and effectively what we want to do is we want to click on Open. So click on Open. We're going to transfer this 16-bit image over to Photoshop. So we click Open. It's sending the raw file across to the Photoshop file, and it's now opened in Photoshop. The first thing we want to check is that the bitrate that was brought across has actually been maintained. So go to Image and go to Mode, and down on Mode you can see that your image is 16-bit, so that any other changes that we currently make to this image will be at a very high quality. Now look, that is the first part of this video completed, and I believe that it will be in 3 parts, as there is a time restriction on the videos, and what I want to do is I want to keep them as clear and concise as possible. So this will be the end of part 1.